My name is Peter Jacobson. I'm the Gortney Professor of Economic Education and Research here at Ottawa University. Welcome if this is your first Gortney Institute event. I'd just like to start off by introducing a few of the things that we're doing here at the Gortney Institute this semester. For those of you who don't know the Gortney Institute, we're just an on-campus think tank, and we look at the issues of politics, philosophy, and economics, and try to understand how those fields relate to freedom and flourishing. And so we host events throughout the semester. We have a few coming up. The next one that we'll have is called the Future of Money Colloquium. And so what we're going to do is like an all-day reading event. And so you'll get a reader, you come, you read and discuss the readings. And if you attend that, you have the chance, or not the chance, you'll get $100 to take away. So we pay you an honorarium. That's pretty typical for events like that. And so if you're interested in that, you can sign up on the little program that's in front of you. If you open it up, there's a QR code. So it's that Future of Money Colloquium. It deals a lot with, what is money, how did it come about, what's it going to look like in the future compared to now. On that note, we'll also be having an event later this semester. It's going to be our third PPE League, which is a philosophy, politics, and economics competition. And what we do in that event is we just use a lot of the things from the reader to have sort of almost a track and field style competition about different ways of thinking about the future of money as it relates to politics, philosophy, and economics. So there's a video game competition, a case competition, all sorts of fun stuff. So if you're interested in those things, sign up for the honorarium or talk to us during or after the event. Yeah, and the PPE League event is intercollegiate, so there's other universities competing. Last year we had a total of 5 universities compete and come to Ottawa. This year we're looking at maybe it being an even bigger event with some competition in Kansas City possibly. So sign up for that Future Money Colloquium. That's a great way to start. Here at Ottawa University, the Gortney Institute is proud to sponsor the PPE major. Again, PPE stands for Philosophy, Politics, and Economics. We're one of a few universities that have early picked up on this new growing field. If you're interested in career fields that are analytic at all, career fields like law, like politics, PPE League, or it's not PPE League, PPE as a major is a good place to start. And so, again, if you want to talk to anybody about that, you can talk to us after the event, but also Dr. Justin Clark. If you have Dr. Justin Clark on campus, he's also at the Gortney Institute, and he runs that major. Now, Dr. Clark couldn't be with us tonight. He's ill tonight. But he sent us a statement. I do want to read one thing before we get to our debate. And the statement relates to Dr. Jim Gortney. And so if you don't know, the Gortney Institute is named after a previous alum, or an alum of Ottawa University, Dr. Jim Gortney. And recently, a few weeks ago, Jim Gortney passed away. And so I just have something written by Justin. He's probably our best wordsmith in the Institute on Jim and his life. And so I'll just read this for you, what Justin wrote. Our institutional namesake, Jim Gortney, passed away recently. Perhaps a few words are in order. Jim was a brilliant economist, as I'm sure has already been related to you. But very importantly, Jim wasn't only a brilliant economist. Much more importantly, Jim was a human being who lived an incredibly full and good life, and saw his work in economics as a way to help others live lives that were both full and good. But what does it mean to be full and good? One way of thinking about this goes all the way back to a philosopher, Aristotle, who described fullness and goodness as eudaimonia, which often translated means flourishing. To flourish means to exercise your capacities at the highest level possible. And arguably, this is a good definition of what we mean when we talk about well-being. When we think about what we want for our children, for example, we want them to have the best versions of themselves that they can be. This won't be the same for everyone. We all have different capacities. On this view, what's important is that we are free, able, and encouraged to develop our capacities to the greatest degree possible for us, whatever that may be in each of our cases. Jim certainly flourished and exercised his capacities to the highest level possible. In addition to a prolific career, which earned the respect of his professional peers, Jim was a beloved teacher and mentor. He was a devoted husband of 61 years to his wife, Amy, whom he met right here at OU. He was also a father to 4 sons, a grandfather to 9 grandchildren, and a great-grandfather to 2, soon to be 3. It's quite common to find people with successful professional careers who are deeply unhappy, having left terrible personal and familial relationships in their wake. Jim has evidence, though, that you don't have to do this. Yes, it's very difficult to maximize more than one variable, to exercise more than one capacity, let alone all of them at the highest levels, but it can be done. And I think we ought to look at Jim's life as an example of that. Interestingly, Jim went fully blind late in his life, and yet that didn't stop him from flourishing. We often see examples of people developing new capacities as they grow older, but I think it's important to note that Jim, having lost one of his capacities, didn't let that stop him from developing and exercising others fully. One way to view a debate is to see its content, in which the goal is simply to win. Another way to see debate is to see it as a dialogue in pursuit of truth, where the goal is a better understanding of each other, and importantly, to get closer to the truth itself. This latter view is the one I think Jim would approve of, and it is in the spirit of mutual respect and pursuit of truth that I think we ought to enjoy ourselves this debate tonight. So, here's how our debate is going to work. There's 4 phases, and before we start the debate, we're going to have a little bit of a survey, which we'll use towards the end. But here's our 4 phases. In the beginning phase, we're going to have each party make an opening statement. So it'll be Dr. McCullough first, then Dr. Wenyika. And yes, if you want to see the program yourself, again, it's in front of you. The second phase, there's going to be responses, each of 4 minutes. The third phase, there's going to be questions and answers. And so that's you, the audience, gets to ask questions and answers of Drs. McCullough and Reggies, and they also get to ask questions of each other for a certain amount of time, for 8 minutes apiece. And lastly, each is going to give a 2-minute, just very short closing remark. So our debate tonight starts with the resolution. If you're unfamiliar with how debates work, there is a resolution, a statement that is said, and then one person in the debate takes the affirmative, they agree with the statement, and then the other person takes the negative, they disagree with the statements. The resolution for tonight is the social responsibility of business is to increase its profits. Again, that's the social responsibility of business is to increase its profits. And the there does imply sort of exclusivity. And so, arguing in the affirmative will be Dr. McCullough, arguing in the negative will be Dr. Wenyika. We're going to put our survey up, so please respond to the survey. This is going to be an entrance, basically just going to ask you before the debate, do you agree with the statement or do you disagree? Does anybody have a question what that means, by the way? Okay. If not, I'll give just a minute for everybody to fill that out. I think it's only the one question. So. And if you can't get the QR code to work, you can come up to the computer a little closer to the screen. You don't have to be shy.
And Peter, do you want to give us a 30-second warning when we're here in 4 minutes? That sound good, Reg?
Yes, please.
I can't tell. To be honest.
So this crossfire
Totally. Total of 8 minutes, just whatever.
And then the audience. Okay. I guess I can just ask each. If you want to do 3 questions, like boom or one at a time, I think
One at a time. We'll just kind of add that. We might even
Depends on the time too, so.
Yeah, I agree.
interjection back and forth. Be kind of free flow.
Yeah.
We could get into the,
Yeah, no, it's time. It'll still cut. It will be cut off.
Okay, so we are going to go ahead and move to the debate. If you're filling that form out, just finish that up. We're going to have one at the end as well. And if you're here for extra credit or anything like that, that form at the end is necessary for you. And even if you're not here for extra credit, you're just here to enjoy it. We want to decide the winner, at least one winner decision. There are kind of multiple ways that we'll talk about winning the debate. As Justin pointed out, the truth is really what we're looking for, but we still want to look at how minds changed. And so that's what we're going to kind of measure at the end, is how minds changed. And so make sure at the end that you do the closing little questionnaire as well. And so we'll start our debate. Russ and Dr. Reggies and Dr. Russ are going to come up here, and I will start Russ off on the timer. He's ready.
Okay, I'm ready. So, thank you all for coming. I think I have the tough part of this argument because I'm trying to say cold, hard, maximizing profits is a good thing for society. So bear with me. I guess I want to tell you that both Reg and I share the same view that we want a flourishing society, a society in which people can live in and have the opportunities to maximize their capacities, as Dr. Clark wrote. And so I think that the society's welfare actually is best if businesses can exclusively focus in on making profits. And so we have to kind of think a little bit harder. Some of you have been in my economics class, some of you haven't. And so a profit is really nothing more than the leftover amount in a given time period. So let's say this year of money. And that money is rewarding the efforts that were done by the business owner, the risks that were taken. And in doing so, they paid wages and they bought materials from suppliers. And so they generated, if they were to have $1 million worth of costs, that was really somebody else's income. And so it is really a social welfare increasing thing to have businesses voluntarily choosing to take on risk and provide these opportunities to people. And so in a market system, it's voluntary on both sides. And so one of the greatest poverty reducing things the last 30 years has just been economic growth. The fact that people are seeking to create value from the existing resources that are there. And that value is recognized when somebody is willing to buy that thing or to sell their hours to that particular employee. And so I think we often underestimate that the profit incentive leads to these elements in society that turn and benefit many people around them. And so my opinion is that if we dilute that with having the company responsible for other items in society, other social responsibilities, such as reducing poverty or reducing unemployment, helping out the poor, feeding the hungry. Those are all noble pursuits, but I think it'll actually end up being a worse outcome by having the responsibility be on those businesses for that. You guys all compartmentalize things in life, right? So you kind of have your academics and you got your family life and your student life, and so when you're not having to think about all of those things at one time, you're probably better doing one when you're focusing in on it. And so from society's standpoint, we have the institution of a business, and in the pursuit of profit, it is providing those services to society. It's giving those opportunities. And the other thing that people often underestimate is losses. So businesses take on losses. I just had a close friend of mine that's running a little tight on bills, and he's like, I'm running out of money, and so he's taking on this risk, and he has one employee. It's a small business, and he's wondering where payroll's going to come from, and so they're just kind of getting by. And so we often forget that it's the profit and loss system, that many companies experience losses at different times as well, but a lot of those resources still get paid.
Dr. Reggies, your opening statement.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And I thank my learned colleague for presenting his view. I vehemently disagree with him on his views that I know are influenced and are informed by Milton Friedman's ideas. And so I will start by saying Milton Friedman's ideas, even though he won a Nobel Peace Prize for it, are now outdated and are completely irrelevant to where businesses are and where the international economy, where the national economy is in this day and age. My friend here mentioned that if businesses start engaging in corporate, in social responsibility, and that equated it as if they're engaging in some sort of a social welfare program and used the word poverty inducing, right? So I would say what is poverty inducing is when businesses and corporations just concentrate on profit and profit alone and ignore other bottom line factors that are not just profit. And I'll be happy to share some of those with you tonight. And I'll also be happy to share some examples of businesses that are currently engaged in corporate social responsibility. We have seen this in the Congo when businesses go in and just mine gold and get out and ignore environmental factors, ignore the people that live around it, and end up disturbing the environment and end up not actually uplifting the community, but inducing poverty in those communities. We have seen the same thing in Kimberley in South Africa with the diamond mines, where the diamond companies go in there and they mine the diamonds, they take the diamonds out, and they completely ignore the welfare, the welfare and the well-being of those that actually go into these mines, and the conditions are both not safe for them, but they get there and they concentrate and they increase their profit. And it induces poverty when corporations ignore corporate responsibilities. We saw this in India with water supply, when an American company went into India, was engaged in the business and utilized the water and completely ignored the fact that the residents and the indigenous people of India needed the water, and it induced poverty. So where I stand tonight is, I will give you several reasons as to why it is a bad idea. It may have been true 30, 50 years ago when Milton Friedman was writing about this, but it's certainly not true today. And I will be happy to share with you that those businesses that ignore corporate responsibilities will not do well, will not be able to won't have long-term viability. And I also believe in the stakeholder theory as opposed to the shareholder theory, which is what Milton Friedman was pushing, and I'm happy to explain that. And I'll also talk about those businesses that ignore corporate social responsibilities will eventually lose their reputation and their brand value, because more and more people are sourcing, and consumers are now aware and are looking to buy things from businesses that align with their values and that engage in corporate social responsibilities. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to engaging with my colleague.
All right, this moves us to phase 2 of the debate, which actually goes right back to Dr. Wenyika. So now you each have 4 minutes to address each other's opening statements.
Thank you. So my colleague, and I mentioned some of the things that I mentioned, and I know, in my opinion, and my colleague may have been influenced by other views, but I know the predominant informing principle of his debate and his argument is freedom. I think to claim that short-term profits, I think it's short-sighted for a company to just think of profits. I think it undermines the long-term viability of a company. For example, if a company neglects environmental and social considerations, this may lead to things like damaging the reputation of that company. It may lead to regulatory risks and consumer backlash, which can ultimately affect a company's profitability in the long run. And so just to focus on profit alone compromises the ability of that business to have long-term viability. Let me give you an example. Unilever, which is an international company, it's even in my country where I was born, took over Lever Brothers. Unilever, it's a multinational consumer goods company. It's recognized for its commitment to sustainability and social responsibility. The company has implemented what they call the Unilever Sustainability Living Plan, which outlines ambitious goals related to the environmental impact, social issues, and sustainability sources. I will tell you right now that Unilever's profits have actually been maximized as a result of them engaging in an act of corporate social responsibilities. I am happy to share with you 10 more examples, but my time's up.
All right, well, so let me take that last one first, that I don't rule out with the increasing profits that it might be profitable to use recycled materials because my consumers demand that I do. So it might be more expensive to use recycled materials, but my customers won't buy my products unless I use them. And so many times, companies like Unilever will find that it is necessary to meet the consumer's demands for a particular product and do some socially sensitive means of production as part of their overall production. And so what I'm against is going beyond that. So I don't think that the corporate executive, being an agent of the stockholders, the people who actually own the company, who are in it for a long-term profit, which I'll circle back to on the profit thing, hopefully if I don't run out of time, that the people who have hired that person to be profitable. And so if it's profitable to pursue some sort of social objective as part of their operation, because more people will buy their product and profits will increase, then we do see companies like Unilever doing that. But how do we know that that is not just falling right into the profit model, as I'm suggesting? And what I'm against is that there's some sort of additional responsibility that beyond increasing profits, there is this need to have to satisfy other social objectives along with the profits that they're seeking. So short-term profits have been a problem for companies, and there have been abuses, there's no doubt. There's probably a list of 100 companies that have executives that have chased short-term profits, possibly to the detriment of the environment or something else. But those are part of the rule of law that they're operating with, and they're also rules within the corporation. So the corporate structure is responsible for designing a position such that the executive has incentive to pursue long-term profits rather than short-term. There's a lot of funny business that can be done year to year to bump up profits if your bonus depends on how good the company looks over a period of time. So over time, shareholders have learned this and companies have learned this, and they've changed the corporate structure so that we're seeking long-term profits. And even Milton Friedman would have said that it's long-term profitability is the goal of the firm. So they're looking to increase profits over the long term, not take something in the short term that then kills the company in a couple of years. So that's always been on the table. So we need that good rule of law that comes from the government and the institutions there. You go to a place like Africa, where I've visited with Dr. Reg, and you'll find that there is not a good rule of law. We're going to Guatemala with students here. There's corruption and other problems with how the rules are implemented, and if businesses are able to pay a bribe or pay something to get something done, then that is how business is carried out, and that's not right. That's not what that's not part of the process that will increase social welfare. So having a strong rule of law that's provided by the government. So again, we need a government to have those things in place, but not a government that tells them, instead of just profits, you need to reduce employment, you need to reduce poverty, you need to reduce homelessness, and now we've got a diluted objective and we're not getting anywhere fast.
All right, we're on to phase 3 already. And so at this point in the debate, it's more conversational, but the general form is that the two sides will ask each other questions and give an opportunity to answer. Dr. McCullough will start with the first question.
How do you address the argument that businesses engaging in social initiatives risk mission drift and reduced competitiveness?
I think businesses that do engage in corporate social responsibility can actually increase their competitiveness. I'll give you an example. Where's my example? So most businesses must maintain a positive corporate image, and that's crucial to competition in business. And now, like I mentioned earlier, consumers are increasingly becoming more conscious of corporate behavior. They watch how corporations act, and companies that engage in social responsibility practices actually end up enhancing their reputation, brand value, which leads to increased customer loyalty and positive public perception. If you ignore corporate social responsibility, it may actually expose a company to reputational risks and loss of customer trust, and thus harming the company's bottom line. Allow me to give you an example. Nike. Nike faced a reputational challenge in the past due to labor practices in its overseas factories, and most of you know that. And the negative publicity led to protests and a decline in customer trust. So Nike responded by improving its supply chain transparency, labor conditions, and implementing sustainability initiatives. This commitment to ethical practices and corporate responsibility helped regain people's trust and help rebuild its brand reputation. So corporate social responsibility helps improve the bottom line.
Exactly, a very profitable thing to do when the American public who's buying most of my shoes is disgusted with my labor practices over in another country. What's the right response to the market? You fix that problem and now you become profitable. And so I agree with that happens in many cases, and businesses need to be sensitive to all of those issues, but that's embodied in this profit system already. And by them having to, let's say, put undue focus beyond profit increasing on social objectives, let's say even in another country, which I think is a good example, then they will not be doing as well for their employees, their product, their direct customers, their stakeholders that are more in front of them. And so I think staying specialized and hyper-focused in what they do. What is a business executive? They probably have a Master's of Business Administration, which you can get at Ottawa University, by the way. Very fine program here. And they know business. They know marketing. They know strategy. They know long-term stuff. They don't know how to help the homeless. Right? And so if we're just asking for money, we can do it through taxes. So instead of if the social objectives have been identified by the government of a homeless program, whatever program, some sort of social assistance, then taxes are increased to pay for that program. And it's a lot easier for that executive to pull out the pen and pay for that donation than it is to worry about how do I structure something with my company so that we're actually getting involved, and maybe some of my employees are spending 1 week a month running over to the homeless shelter and serving in soup lines or something. That's doing a lot, diverting a lot of resources away from the primary objective, when it would be just better off to have that tax payment if that's what's needed. The government and nonprofit sector is in a much better position to make those decisions than any business executive, I think, out there.
Dr. Reggies, you can either respond to that or ask Russ a question.
Well, yeah, let me respond. His last is the government should be doing this, and we all know. And in the words of Ronald Reagan, later he said, one thing that terrifies is when somebody says, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. You and I know, one, that governments are some of the least efficient institutions with money, that corporations can actually do a better job and to directly impact the community and cut out the middleman, which in this case is the government. It sounds to me like you are okay with high taxes, right? You're okay with saying let the corporation pay all these taxes to the government and let the government then go take care of the poor and do the job that corporations could potentially be doing as far as corporate social responsibility. And sir, I disagree.
So if a company, you're saying that the executive's in a better position than the government, and that might be hard to argue with, but I don't think they're in any better position for that. And the reason, if it's a voluntary payment, let's say a company has $100 million that they're devoting towards some social cause. How is that happening? The CEO, maybe with a small group of executives, is choosing to support this special cause, $100 million. Where did that money come from? It came from operations. That could have went to shareholders as a distribution of the profits. That could have went to raises to their employees in the form of wages. It could have went to purchase more supplies for next year. And so my point is if that 100 million had been, let's just say to keep things easy, distributed to the employees or the shareholders, they would then get to pick where the social cause, where that money's going to go. And it'll be in a dispersed fashion to causes that they think are important. So the CEO's cause may not have anything to do with me as a shareholder. I want to give to my local church. Well, that opportunity is taken away by having this undue responsibility put on the corporate executive. It'd be much better if they just focused on profits, let the morality of giving lie with the people, not with the business. Businesses are amoral. They don't have morals. People have morals. And so that's going to end up being directed by the CEO. I'd rather have it be decentralized through all of the people that it's touching when that 100 million hits their hands.
Unfortunately, I disagree again with your characterization that business are amoral. I do realize that a business as a construct is amoral, but when a corporation is acting in a community, yes, and ethics are involved. Ethics in action is morality. I know the argument that that businesses have one moral obligation, that is to make profit. And I'm saying that businesses have a moral obligation for profit and people. For example, I think what you mentioned, what you're holding on to is what we call the shareholders theory, right? Which means you're saying this money must go to the shareholders, and then the shareholders can then write the check and help the community, as opposed to the corporation writing the check. Well, if the corporation is not the one that's identified with writing the check, and the corporation is the one that's not perceived by those in the community as actually taking action, because you cannot directly link the act of a shareholder to the company. Jack is a shareholder in Microsoft, and Jack gets a check, and Jack writes a check to supply water there. Nobody's ever going to say Microsoft is helping the poor, and nobody's going to you're not going to engender any long-term allegiances or trust or affinities towards Microsoft because Jack wrote a check to a well in Malawi.
All right. If Dr. McCullough wants to respond to that, he could use his closing remarks. But at this point, we have to move into our audience Q&A. And so I am going to kind of put it out to you. We've got 16 minutes. You can direct your question to either Dr. McCullough or Dr. Wenyika.
Or both. I'll bring you the microphone. And when you ask a question, tell me your shirt size, because we're giving out free t-shirts to those who ask questions. So, all right, I saw a hand immediately.
Okay, I actually have a question for Russ. So you mentioned about taxes, that like through taxes, it's how we should help the poor people. But like I'm talking as an international, and you guys like you pay taxes and you don't even have like free medical. So how do you think that's gonna work?
So I agree that the system isn't that great, but it's going to be worse if we put more pressure on businesses to solve the problem rather than just making profits. And so the best way health outcomes and poverty can be reduced is by having people have a job. And so the win-win transaction that happens through being focused on making profit will allow for new innovation, new technological advance. And what's exciting that gives me chills actually is that when one sector advances in the United States, it has benefits for all the other sectors. So if we kind of come up with a new machine that helps the healthcare industry with taking scans of knees, and we might think that, oh, well, that's fine for the healthcare industry, but what does it do for oranges? What does it do for beer, chicken wings, and pizza? Well, it can actually, those resources are freed up because of the new machine. Resources are freed up that can be devoted to another place. And that's part of the economic growth, that we can have more of everything through technological advance and innovation. And I think we'll get that by businesses focusing in on profits rather than on various other things.
Okay, next question.
And go ahead and state your name too before.
Well, I'm Jesse. You say that if the need scanner machine can be made under a system where they prioritize profits, but I don't see directly how it could be made that way, or why it couldn't be made under a system where it prioritizes people and profits. If anything, I can see why it might be prioritized more under people and profits as opposed to just profits.
Give her a t-shirt.
That's us.
So yes, I don't exclude the possibility that people can be having other people in mind. I just don't think that that's the responsibility that should be focused on. And again, I think their motives are actually for profit rather than people. How that happens is if the new scanning machine, it used to take 3 nurses to do this procedure, but now with this new machine, we can only use 2. It sounds like 1 nurse is unemployed, but in reality, with the growth in another sector, in another healthcare place, she's able to help the poor. She's able to help somebody else in another department or another area. And so we're actually helping more people through freeing up those resources with that advance.
Can I comment?
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's important for us to frame what corporate social responsibility here. What I'm hearing from my colleague here is, it sounds to me like it's something that's being levied against companies. It's something that is being, it's an obligation that's being levied against companies. No, that's not what we're talking about. When something is levied against a company, that's tax, right? We're not talking about a tax here. We're talking about companies having the wisdom to know that if they voluntarily engage in corporate social responsibility, which is profits and people, it will actually improve their bottom line and the livelihoods of the community and stakeholders, not just shareholders.
Daniel, and I have a question for Russ. So, in your opening statement, you said economic growth has been the benefit of everybody, and I would ask, if that is true, why do we see some people rising far above everyone and others going down? And why not focusing people to help maybe combat this issue would not be effective?
So I don't care as much about the gap that a lot of people do. I care about the pool. And so what happens is people kind of miss the mark. When economic growth happens, a rising tide rises all boats. And so what we'll see is that the gap between rich and poor over time might do this, and so it gets a little wider, but the poor are better off relative to where they would have been otherwise. And so we see this when we look at country by country comparisons of those that experience more growth through opening to markets. And so I'm less worried about the gap and more worried about the poor. So the gap can be a reflection of benefits going to the poor, and it's not a zero-sum game where the rich are taking from the poor, that there's a fixed pie. It's called a zero-sum mentality, but rather there's these win-win situations of value creation, and so we're just making bigger pie. And so even the poor have a bigger slice, and we see that in the data, that in countries that pursue more policies towards freedom, that is true. Now that is not outside of this, that's a little bit outside of this discussion in the sense of the shareholders that that's not at the heart of the matter here. What's at the heart of the matter here, it would be that the businesses can do better, grow faster, make more pie when they're focused on profits as opposed to being distracted with other objectives.
Thank you. And I am saying that businesses will make more profit when they are focused on profit and people. That without this other side, their ability to make profit and to maintain long-term viability will be vastly compromised. And I'm glad he mentioned that, that your kind of question is kind of, touching on more economic theory than anything else. Because when we start delving in that economic theory, then some people begin, when I say corporate social responsibility, what some people start hearing, well, socialism. They start hearing communism. But what I'm sharing is, it is very much a capitalistic idea that yes, you can focus on both people and profit and be able to uplift both your company and stakeholders.
I need to add that I think it's a slippery slope, and in that if we start to move that direction of putting that responsibility, but freely, it doesn't take too long before the government says, oh, you have to be doing this, and then the regulations come, and then in terms of socialism being where there's more government involvement instead of less, let's just say a move towards one direction or the other. There's a move towards more government rather than less, when there starts to become these responsibilities that the general people and maybe even some CEOs, because they're Unilever CEO and others are saying, oh yeah, we have a social responsibility and that's what we do. Again, whether they're saying that for wink wink, I can make more money if I say those words, or if they're actually, or if it's really just to make profits bigger, or whether it's to actually fulfill the hearts and minds of the world, I don't know.
One more on this, because then we have to do some more questions.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
No,
No,
this
the
is their
time to ask
question.
questions is over. Alright, questions from the crowd? Yeah.
Mr. Science.
My name is Anthony, and this is a question for Dr. Reggie. Should a company value the economic aspects concerning its employees and stakeholders less than a disadvantaged and disenfranchised people, when the profits given to the employees and stakeholders give them the ability to fund nonprofit organizations, allowing groups to freely and morally act instead of fulfilling a company agenda and keeping within those guidelines of that company agenda, while also stimulating the economy in that a company's profit process isn't infringed upon by enforcing the company to consider the cost of social programs and social responsibility.
So thank you. So when I heard social programs, and I just got done differentiating, because once you say social programs, again, people are thinking social welfare, right? And you're thinking that there are certain society as certain expectations on companies, and those expectations is a form of an involuntary tax that these people face. So let me just say this about, because you talking about shareholders, and I take about stakeholders. So shareholders, as you know, are people who own or who are interested in profit. I want my dividends. I want my dividends at the end of the year. Whereas stakeholders includes customers, employers, suppliers, communities, but it's not just shareholders. So what I'm saying here is that a company can thrive whilst at the same time considering the stakeholders, not just the shareholders, and that the company can make even more money for its shareholders if it engages in corporate social responsibility, not become socialist or not become like another independent social welfare organization. That's not what I'm talking about. I hope I kind of understood your question. It's a little long and a little bit, and English is my second language, Mr. Science, so you kind of lost me there. But there's a difference between stakeholders and shareholders. My colleague here is about shareholders, I'm about stakeholders. And I'm saying stakeholders are individuals that are beyond just shareholders. That when that happens, it lifts all boats, including the financial bottom line of the company.
I'm Colm Kearney. Question for Dr. Reg. Do you think businesses and corporations should be required by law to fulfill moral responsibility to people, or simply it would be better for society if they did, out of free will, fulfill responsibility to people?
Yes. Thanks. Fantastic question, right? So let me begin by saying this. In my colleague's last question, I heard him sharing his fear that once we start engaging in this, we start inviting more government oversight, we start inviting more, and then we result with, the end result is government start adding more legislation and the regulatory burden increase. When we started this debate, my colleague here said it was better for the corporations to make profit and then give the money to government in order to take out these actions, but later I'm hearing him say that, wait a minute, if we start doing this, then it's gonna invite government also. But he's okay with feeding the beast, right, which is the thing. Now, let me say this. Corporate social responsibility is not a government mandated, it's not something that the government mandates. However, there are certain regulations which my colleague agreed. For example, if you are going to dig for gold, then make sure you fill up the hole and you restore the land as it was, because corporations are not gonna, some of the corporations are not gonna do that willingly, so the government steps in and puts a law in place because of erosion. We've seen that in many countries. So there is a time for certain rules and regulations to be put in place, but corporate social responsibility that I'm talking about is a voluntary, strategic action by a corporation that says, unless we engage in this, we might compromise our ability to reach a certain bottom line, financial bottom line.
So I just want to say that Reg's angle seems to be that if we pursue all of these things simultaneously, we all win and profits are better, right? I think
Yes.
is the gist of that argument. What I'm saying is that if you pursue profits, then the outcomes afterwards will be better, all on their own. We don't have to assume that people have to pick the right social cause and other things. The responsibilities lie with the people. The money, again, if it's through higher wages, the success that comes from the business and the suppliers, all of that stays with the people. And so we'll have more profits, which will then to lead to better social outcomes after, without having to simultaneously delude ourselves and not ever get as far as we could in the first place.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
You mentioned earlier when Dr. Reg was talking about how a company will change how it acts in response to, like, customers finding out they have unethical business practices overseas, such as sweatshops. You said that profit-based systems will also do this, but you implied that they would only do this if the customers found out and were displeased about it. Does this mean that if the customers never found out, such business practices, no matter how unethical they may be, would simply continue?
Give her a second t-shirt.
They would, if customers weren't able to figure it out, then it probably wasn't as big of a deal. I don't think there's any case in history where it didn't eventually get figured out, if it was a big deal, right? How many of these really bad cases somehow didn't get leaked out? Law of large numbers, if you're a big corporation doing business, some undercover study, so at some point it comes out. And then also with the rule of law, with certain disclosures to shareholders, so the Securities and Exchange Commission would require transparency about where you're doing business and how you're treating your employees, what they're getting paid. So some disclosures like that have improved over time as a part of the rule of law to address things being uncovered quicker. But at the end of the day, whether we're on stakeholder theory or shareholders theory, we're gonna have bad people doing bad things. And so I think that will eventually surface and it won't stay hidden forever, even in a profit system.
Okay, so we're now to the final phase of the debate, and so since the affirmative side began the debate, the affirmative side now has the decision whether to give their closing remarks first or second.
Second.
All right?
Thank
Reg,
you.
You're up.
Thank you. So,
And two minutes each for this.
So at the beginning of this debate, what I heard from my colleague, he used the word compartmentalization and gave you guys as an example, right? Well, I disagree with the theory of compartmentalization. I'm more for a theory of integration. And here's my example. At any one time as I stand here, I'm the president at Ottawa University. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I am all those things every time and any time, wherever I go. I don't cease to be a father because I'm engaged in one particular activity. I don't cease to be the president of this place simply because I've gone home and I'm in my bed. I'm still the president of this place. That's what I mean by integration. At any one time, a corporation is all those things and can profit and can make money. The debate over corporate social, I know it's ongoing. However, I think that companies can adopt a comprehensive approach and a strategic approach and voluntarily identify areas of corporate social responsibility that help their bottom line by instilling confidence in stakeholders and hence their long-term viability and brand elevation and brand loyalty. And for those who are conscious consumers, they'll be more likely have long-term allegiances to their brand if they engage in corporate social responsibility. And a company can be all those things at once.
All right, Dr. McCullough.
My time hasn't started yet, has it? I think one of the greatest examples of this is Bill Gates. He did the most marvelous things early in his career when he developed Microsoft. He helped the world, he became a billionaire, but it's in the trillions the impact that his development had on the rest of the world. Relative to helping malaria in Africa, not the noble cause that it is a noble cause, but his resources aren't as better suited for that as to running the business. He did much more for society running Microsoft than any of his philanthropic things that he's been at lately with reducing carbon and other fine initiatives. I'm not trying to discount that, but by putting people like Bill Gates right in the center of focusing in on doing what they're best at, we'll get better results. So I want to close by saying that there are massive social benefits that occur through the profit motive. Just by trying to maximize profits, to increase profits for my company, again, we're churning over innovation and change, and we're getting new products, and we're getting economic growth. And these benefits are going to be less if the CEO, the leader, is distracted, and those benefits are going to come in the form of lower wages for employees, or the shortcomings are going to come in the form of lower wages for employees, misallocated resources, and worse social outcomes. So let's stay focused on making profit and growing the economy, the best poverty fighter in the history of the earth.
Okay, let's give a round of applause for our two. So a few things. First off, Kevin is now going to work on getting up the QR code for the second survey. In that survey, you're going to be asked a few questions. Please answer them. And one of the questions is what your belief was before the debate. We already asked that once, but just in case people trickled in, we asked that again. So answer the same way you did the first time. Don't change what your original answer was. So before the debate, what was your view? And then after the debate. And our decision on the winner, we're going to look at two categories. We're going to look at, first off, what the majority ended with. But we're also going to look at who changed the most minds. And as Dr. Clark so nicely stated in our intro, it wasn't really about winning and losing tonight. We look at that because it makes the debate have better stakes, and it's more fun for that purpose. But at the end of the things, we really were interested in generating more shared understanding. Last thing, and I think Russ might say something here in a sec, the positions that the two folks on the stage took on tonight were, though they might agree with them, it's not necessarily the case that they agree with them word for word. In other words, in debate, oftentimes you affirm something that you may have a few objections with, or you object to something that you might actually agree with to a certain extent. And so just for the record, so we know, this wasn't a statement that was perfectly created, so each person agreed or disagreed with it. I'm sure the views on it are more nuanced than a mere agreement or disagreement. So don't come away with this thinking that Reg and Russ are mortal enemies on this. At the end of the day, things are probably a little closer than the debate stage makes it here.
I just wanted to comment that your short answers in your exit survey are really important for us and our donors. We have very generous donors, the Menard family, Save Big Money at Menards, And then our new donor this year is the Bradley Foundation, and they love to see some of the comments, to see the types of impact that our programs are having, to continue having events like this. So, thank you.
Okay, and we're just gonna give a few minutes for people to finish that up, and in, I don't know, I'd say about 3 minutes, we're gonna look at the final results of the poll. So if you want to know the results, stick around. If you are in either my class, Dr. McCullough's class, or Dr. Clark's class, all of those courses are associated with extra credit for attending this debate, and so on the survey it's gonna ask you which class or classes you're in. And so be sure to fill that out as well. So we will check the results in about 3 minutes. So again, that's the QR code if you still need it.
Come on up, the results are in.
Oh, I don't know. I can't handle rejection. I'll be bruised for life.
Russ informed me that if you're in his class and you voted for Reggie, you actually don't get extra credit. Just
Too late.
All right. So, ready?
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Russ will have some final words, but Gordon Institute here at Ottawa campus, actually through all the campuses, we're frequently trying to engage people with these deeper issues. We know there's a lot of reasons people come to college, but college is one of the few times in your life where you're encouraged to talk about deep ideas as it relates to philosophy, politics, and economics, and what it means to live the good life, as our friend Dr. Clark always puts it. So we appreciate you coming, and just keep that program and keep aware of our events here on campus. We really look forward to people attending. We think over the course of a few years on campus, we've had a lot of students where it's made a pretty big difference in their lives, I believe. So, Russ?
I just want to close with, if you want to learn about money, this colloquium's coming up here Saturday, March 16th. It's a little ways off, but it is limited seats. So that will fill up. You get a $100 bill. I pay cash. So you're gonna get a $100 bill at the end. We're gonna have a nice breakfast, or not, the breakfast is continental. We'll have a lunch here at OU, and then we go out to a restaurant for a meal at the end of the day. And so it's a real nice event, and you don't have to come in knowing anything about money other than you read the material. We have about close to 150 pages. It's not too daunting. It sounds like more than it is. I think, or is it 100?
It's about 100.
Okay, around 100, I guess, of just different things about getting to learn about money. So if you're always curious about digital currency, Bitcoin, money, how it works, inflation, that's what that one's going to be all about. It'll be a lot of fun. I hope you join. So sign up for that tonight. Thank you. Good job.